Hi, welcome to part 1 of task 1 of my assessment for music industry. I'm going to be talking about how the different formats to listen to music over the years since the 1950s to present day have changed the way that people listen to music and the way that it has influenced our society. The first one that I'm going to be talking about is vinyl. Vinyl were these, well, compared to what we think nowadays, were large discs. There was the smaller ones that could house one song on each side, and then the bigger ones that could house an entire album. The way these were played were they had ridges in the actual disc going from the outside to the inside, and when you put a needle or a stylus on those ridges and played it so it spins, it would create the sound waves and produce the music. There were a couple of ways that vinyls could be played. One of them was turntables, which would be used at homes, but the one I'm going to be talking about today is jukeboxes. Jukeboxes were big sort of contraptions that housed many different vinyl records. When someone went, they put a bit of money into the jukebox, selected what vinyl they wanted played, and the vinyl would come down and start playing through the speakers at the bottom. This was mad because nowadays when you listen to music in a shop or in a diner or whatever, it's a playlist that the shop or diner has chosen. You don't actually get to choose what music you listen to unless you're wearing headphones. But jukeboxes were different because the people who came in could actually pick what they wanted played. Obviously, it wouldn't be to everyone's taste, but someone there could choose what they wanted played. And that is how it brought people together. These were mainly found in the 1950s in diners. And the people who actually frequented these diners, they loved music. They had to, because it was one of the main places you could go and listen to music and eat. So it formed a sort of community. A community of people who loved the same music, maybe even owned those records, but wanted to listen to them as a group and find people who had the same views as they did and thought the same way they did. It was a way of using music to bring people together to form this community. And this community was made up of teenagers. This was a bit revolutionary. Well, a lot revolutionary, because teenagers hadn't been marketed towards before. They weren't really someone or a demographic that would be thought of when making music. It was, I'm going to make this style of music because that is who will listen to it. Teenagers were never a part of that until all of this happened. And so it was a completely new market. Artists started saying things in their songs and singing what they actually felt because they realised that they finally had an audience who wanted to stand up for what they believed in. They were old enough to make their own decisions, but they weren't too young to be completely influenced by their parents, or too old to not be able to challenge the status quo anymore. It was the perfect age group to start a new movement. And it was perfect because teenagers would hang out at diners. Someone who is very famous for doing this is Elvis. And he got a lot of hate for this from these teenagers' parents, because his songs were viewed as brilliant to a certain demographic, but were viewed as terrible to the parents of this demographic, because they thought that it was crude and disgusting. It was more provocative than they had ever heard. Instead of normal classical music to their ears that was perfectly fine and PG, it was something that you could actually relate to in a way that was deeper than just surface level pleasant noises. So this started a rebellion. Now, this rebellion was incredibly important. It created new genres like punk and rock. These things all added together to make a whole group or groups of people who would challenge everything that they'd been taught and make their own opinions. And it completely revolutionized the way the world works. If this rebellion had never happened, we would be far off of what we are today. You may see someone and think, yeah, they're an adult when they're around 18. But that maybe wouldn't have happened in the 1950s. Seeing someone like that and thinking they were respectable because of this rebellion. A lot of things that were once too challenging and were going against everything that people had been taught are now the social norm. Because those teenagers that caused that rebellion and that were in that rebellion are now parents, and they're teaching their values instead of their parents' values, and they're creating a new status quo. They're creating a new, more accepting world that they want their kids to live in. And who knows? Maybe it'll happen again. Maybe there'll be another rebellion, or maybe it's already even started. But you can see that this rebellion, this incredible thing that changed the way the world works, wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for vinyl being introduced. Thanks. This has been part 1, vinyl.